Hello, this is Richard Mull, Dr. Richard Mull with the Mullet Over podcast. And I am excited today to have Cathi Chamberlain, author, activist. When she hosted me on her show, she was calling me an activist. I was like, wow, it's not a title I've ever put by my name. But I believe if you're making an impact in this world, then you're active, and we need a lot of what you're doing and what others like you are doing. So I am looking forward to hearing more of your story. Thank you for hosting me on your podcast. And I was thinking that the title of your book, Rules for Deplorables, looking forward to hearing more about that. Want to get a copy and exchange some books here. But my experience just in the last couple of weeks, I responded to one it was an interview that was after the Iowa caucus, and I had posted that and responded to it. And this lady, Joy, was talking about how all of us white Christians view her and the rest of the world. And I was honestly going, I honestly don't know anybody that would hold that opinion. But she's saying we're all a certain way. And then I had people that reacted to that, both positively and negatively. But just yesterday, I posted one of the things that I have done actually all around the world in a variety of different subjects and arenas. But I'll stand in the gap. And what I do is, like when I minister to women, I'll stand in the gap and repent for what we have done to hurt them, meaning men. I have been very honorable to women my whole life. And been respectful, but many of them are carrying hurts and wounds that they got from men. So I've done the same thing all over Africa, in African American churches here. I'll stand in the gap for what we have done to them, to tear down the walls, to build bridges. And it became more and more personal to me in that arena specifically when I found out both sides of my family owned slaves. And so and I've watched some of the most amazing miracles. I'm not making this stuff up. In Zambia and South Africa, everywhere I preached, 8 different times in 8 different cities, when I would be preaching a message called Healing the Land and I'd stand in the gap, it would start to pour torrential rains during one of the worst droughts in 30 years. I mean, it was incredible. In other places in Africa and other nations, we would watch miracles in the land happen when I'm doing that. God wants to see the walls torn down and wants to see us come together. So yesterday I had posted a TikTok. I'm a TikToker now, which is interesting. And I didn't even know exactly what that was. And so and I stood in the gap and I was repenting to African Americans to build some bridges, tear down walls, to bring some healing. And I got somebody on there that posted, I had to delete them. At first I was responding, but they were calling me an Edomite, I'm bound for hell, calling me a warlock, calling me like every name in the book, saying that like my white Jesus was not the true Jesus that there. And I was like, this is the kind of hatred that they're trying to stir up in the land, in our nation, in the world right now. When my best friend's a Palestinian, like that's not a very popular group of people right now. Many people are putting them all in one box. He's a Christian, sold out, on fire believer who loves people of every tribe and tongue. He lives in a Jewish community, highly respected and highly regarded, but now, because of his ethnicity, is hated. So I'm like, we've been called deplorables, and I just got a heavy dose of that on my TikTok feed in the last 24 hours from one person. So I would imagine your books have garnered you a little bit of reaction here and there. So tell us more about yourself and how you got started, about your book, and looking forward for our listeners to get to know you.
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Richard. It's great to see you again. And one of the things that caught my attention that you said is how you can get attacked by these different people, and when they start name calling, that is just being taught to them by the people who want to divide us. I know you know that.
Yeah.
And I always try to keep that in mind. And also for those who don't see that and see it as a division, we just have to wait till they catch up and until God takes the scales off their eyes, truthfully, because I don't know about you, but I woke up, I can remember when I woke up, so everybody just wakes up red-pilled, as they say, at a different timing. But how I got started with my book, I was actually a licensed building contractor here in Florida.
Wow.
And in fact, I started up the nation's first all-female construction company, believe it or not, with complete with the pink pickup trucks and and everything. And I had about 19 girls on payroll. We did fantastic work. And then I got shut down by a Democrat, believe it or not. That's a whole story. That would take a whole show to tell you. But I was basically in line to do a reality show, and the producer contacted me, and so, but then I picked the wrong person for that reality pilot, and it happened to be a woman with a bunch of Obama stickers on the back of her car, and I kept saying, this is not right. But anyway, so she completely destroyed my company, but then I went into business for myself as doing the handiwork, because I can do pretty much everything. But I ended up really inspecting roofs for mobile homes. That was what my main money-making machine was. And right at October 26th, I think I remember the date exactly, I was inspecting roofs from Hurricane Irma. If you remember when that hit, 2017 here in Florida. Yeah. And so all of a sudden, and I mean, I had done this for years and years, and all of a sudden my ladder shifted to the left, and I fell backwards on a concrete slab, and I ended up breaking my back in two places, and both my wrists, and got life-threatening DVTs. Now, we all go through, I mean, very few of us get through life without some sort of life-changing incident. And in that case, that was mine. And God wanted me going in a different direction, because as I was laying around recovering, and it took me about 1.5 years, I kept watching the news and just furious the way Trump was being treated. Now, to give you a little background politically, I was not a Republican all my life. In fact, I was a flaming liberal back in my California days when I was in my 20s, and maybe even up to late 30s.
Do they put it in the water?
I mean, early 30s. Yeah. Oh, I know. It's no, they definitely have their way of indoctrinating you. And if you live in California, I don't know if you ever have, or any area like that that's very, very blue, there's a bubble around you, and everybody's
family that lives there now, and they're like, it's crazy world. Just the level of vehemence over people who have a different view, and the celebrations of when stuff that we would go is so wrong, deplorable, is happening. They're in the streets celebrating, and it's just like, wow. So yeah.
Well, it's definitely a different mindset, and that bubble that's around you, you can't get out of it. It's very difficult to break away, because everybody else thinks that way. And so you don't even realize there's another way to think. Or if other people think a different way, you think they're cuckoo. And that's what liberals today think of conservatives. So I remained a liberal until I met Ross Perot, if you remember that, back in 1992 when he ran. And I just thought he was incredible. He really opened my eyes. I mean, that's when I realized there's something seriously wrong with our country, and we need to start changing things now. And so I became I was a Democrat when I was liberal. Then I became an independent, which I remained for 25 years until 2015. I had moved here. I've been living in Florida for 25 years now, but and so and more my eyes became more and more open, and I realized we were really headed for disaster, especially when Obama ran. I saw right through that completely from the get-go, and of course when he said fundamentally transforming America, there was no doubt in my mind what he meant, and we're seeing it come true today, and we're perilously close to his dream. But so I ended up turning Republican and changed my party just because here in Florida it's a closed primary. So unless you're a Democrat or a Republican, you can't vote in the primary. And I was determined to get Trump elected simply because of all those 16 people on stage, there was nobody on there other than Trump that I felt had the backbone that would be able to get in office and really drain the swamp, which he did not. And I am disappointed in that. But I think the second time around, he knows a lot better, but I believe he really wanted to unite Democrats because he grew up with them all his life and Republicans, and he thought he had that power. I don't think he realized how deep the swamp goes, but at any rate, so as I was recovering, to get back to that, I was very, very upset, and it took me back to my California days when I read a book called Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. And if your audience doesn't know, that's looking backwards to me, but I think they can get the gist.
It looks correct to me.
Oh, it does? Good. Okay.
Yeah.
So Saul Alinsky died in like 1972. He wrote this book and had it published in 1971. But he was an extreme leftist, and this book is filled with tactics on how to destroy the Republican Party. And the country more than the Republican Party. I mean, it's just destroying the entire country. Hillary Clinton is a huge student. She wrote a student of Alinsky's. She wrote her thesis on the man. And
so you're trying to sell this book?
What his book? Well, no, I wrote the counter to his book. That's why mine's called Rules for so you're making a joke out of that as far as Clinton. Well, also Obama, he learned everything on community organizing that he knows from this book because Alinsky wrote the playbook really for community organizing that the left all follow. And I want to make a distinction here between liberals and leftists because there is a distinction. A lot of people kind of lump them together, but liberals are just bleeding hearts, and they really do want to help people, and they think that the conservatives are very very mean people, and that they're not out for the benefit of the whole. Okay, but the left simply wants to destroy our country, and that's what Saul Alinsky was. So he had 13 tactics, all designed, and when you know them, and that's the unfortunate thing, the American people, the Republicans, especially conservatives, do not know these tactics. So when they're used against Trump or anyone in this party, we don't recognize what's being done to us. And we just can't imagine that people can be so conniving and so evil. And again, this is the left, but the left drives the liberals. And as a matter of fact, back when Alinsky, probably the late 60s, he was a real Chicago kind of gangster guy. He joined forces with a couple called Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven, shortened to Cloward Piven. And this couple, they were sociology professors at Columbia University. They were big, huge leftists, kind of with the Weather Underground, if you remember them. And, all of them worked in tandem to destroy the country. And Cloward Piven wrote a series of strategy papers. These were all designed to take our systems that work, that we've built over many, many years, to help the poor, to help all of our systems. They took them and broke them down, including the voting system, and broke them down into categories where they could attack them one by one, and basically implode them by throwing so much garbage at them that they wouldn't make sense anymore, literally. And so their most famous one was written in 1966, and that was called The Weight of the Poor. And that was a strategy paper for helping the poor. Like, who doesn't want to do that? But the way they approached it was that they attacked the welfare system and threw people on the welfare system so that it could no longer be a viable system. It couldn't take care of all the people that were thrown its way. And so that was, and what they did, they went to the Democrats and they went to the Republicans. This is kind of interesting. And they asked both parties, because they knew if they could get one party on their side, then they would be able to really manipulate the systems. And so they made a deal. They said, imagine our surprise when the Democrats said, okay. And the deal was that they would take an inner city, and they would give the Democrats all the votes. They would make sure by community organizing and all that stuff that they would gather all the votes and get especially the black vote, and in exchange for the Democrats getting bills passed that would help their ultimate goal. For example, one of their strategy papers was all about elections. I forget the exact title of it, but what they wanted to do was create so much what they called deadwood on our voter rolls that it would make elections easy to steal, basically. And so they were able to get Bill Clinton in 1992 to pass the motor voter bill. In fact, Francis Fox Piven was there in the White House when he did it, when he signed it. So that was the deal that they made, and it's been very effective. And all these years later, it's still very effective. But so what I did with my book, because I wondered why conservatives didn't see the tactics the way I did. See, for the left, it's almost like this book, The Rules for Radicals, is the Bible of the left, literally. And Saul Alinsky basically dedicated it, at least he put it in his acknowledgement, to Lucifer.
Wow.
Yes, and so the book itself, with the 13 tactics, it also has 11 rules for ethics. So it dictates how ethical the left can be, the Democrats can be, in order to get what they want. And the higher the level of what they want, the more important it is, the less ethical they can be, to the point of ethics be damned, throw them out the window, don't even use them, we need to get this done. That's how they think. Well, this is mandatory reading for liberals and for Democrats. And that's how I read it. And so what I did with my book, I realized that nobody was seeing it the way I was.
Were you liberal when you read it?
Yes.
And it was a wake-up... Was it a wake-up call when you first read it? Or was it, yes, I like this, I'm believing?
No, because it really wasn't a wake-up call, because it's really a difficult book to read, because you know how elites, right? the elitists. They try to write so high and mighty to make themselves look really powerful and really smart and all that. So it's not written well. And so at the time, I wasn't a rabid liberal. But I can see where it could definitely open liberals' eyes and how they latch onto it. As a matter of fact, when I wrote my book, chapter 6 is called Stupid Is as Stupid Does. It's all about the NEA, the National Education Association. And when I researched that my book, on their website, they had rules for radicals as reading material. So imagine that. So that your audience understands. So what I did with my book, I took each one of Alinsky's 13 tactics, opening up a chapter with each one, using current events to explain how that particular tactic is used. Wow. And my book has over 400 footnotes. A year and a half ago, it reached number 14 on Amazon's top 25, and then I got censored. So, there's always a good with a bad.
You got censored on Amazon?
Yeah. A lot of people have been.
Okay. It doesn't surprise me, but it's one of the platforms I had not heard of censoring before.
Well, this is the way they do it. It's not like they take your book off. You can still go there and buy my book. But a sign will pop up that says this seller only allows buyers to buy one book. So my income really dived because, a lot of people buy 2, 3, 10 if they have a book reading class, whatever. And so that really hurt. Well, but most of my income comes from, because I go all over the state of Florida speaking. I was slated to go outside the state finally when COVID hit, and that kind of killed that buzz. So yeah, that's the basic gist. And to give your audience an idea, just a sampling of one of the tactics, for example, tactic 5, which is the most used and the most easy to understand, is ridicule is man's most potent weapon. Okay, so when you hear Democrats calling Trump a xenophobe, a homophobe, a sexist, they don't really believe that. But if they say it enough times, the audience starts believing it. Their followers start believing it. Their sheep believe it. And then they start repeating it, and it becomes a vicious cycle. In fact, somebody in my own family who is a liberal, if you remember, I think it was West Charlottesville, was it not, where Trump went to, and there were a bunch of KKK white supremacist guys there, and it was all about tearing down a monument, and a whole bunch of more people, but there were also white supremacists there. And Trump made that statement that said, hey, there's good people on both sides. Well, if you read the entire statement, and don't take it out of context, actually what he was talking about was those people who had an opinion about tearing the monument down versus those who wanted to keep it. But my family member will never believe that. I've tried so hard to get this person to look at the entire, but the hatred for Trump has been so ingrained that they can't even look at him.
One of the things that blows me away, because I honestly am, Trump is not my main focus. I did vote for him, and it's not there's other things, but is when I speak something that is just clear statement of fact, truth, people go, oh, you're one of those Trump cronies who doesn't think for himself. And I'm like, I don't even know if Trump's ever talked on this subject. How do you lump everybody with, and it's not one opinion. It would be a variety of things. And I was like in my mind too, that's the definition of bigotry. When you see everybody through a lens and you don't let them be who they are, that is bigotry. And so when I've had that, I'm going, where are you coming from to lump anybody with this opinion as a narrow-minded person who only does whatever Trump tells you? And I was like that type of response, I've seen it from Christians and non-Christians. And I could tell the ones that just watch the mainline media and accept what they're being fed, and that's deplorable.
I agree. And they've tried to lump us all into a cult, and they've given us that name. And I'm with you. If it wasn't for Trump, I'd still be an independent. However, it's not Trump the man that I so want in office. It's that he gets it. He understands that we are up against evil, and we are ready to lose our country because of the processes that the Democrats are all in with. And you notice how they all stick together. Republicans do not do that. And I don't think we should accept to save our country.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I believe that it is important for believers to unite we are fighting. One of the things from our ministry, we deal with people coming out of the satanic occult world. And so the things that we learn about the people that we've ministered to that have been trafficked at the highest level of our government, that is the stuff that is real. It needs to be stamped out. And it is satanic, demonic stuff. Almost everybody we minister to that has been trafficked, there have been government officials, there have been people in the court system, judges, the lettered agencies, and almost everybody that we have ministered to coming out of human trafficking. And so when you walk in that on a day in and day out basis, it's anybody can call me a conspiracy theorist all they want. No, it is the real deal. I've been front row seat, front and center to the reality of it. It's not stuff that people were also just standing on the what do they call it, fact checkers, and I'm like, it's not hard to find that all the fact checkers were bought
exactly.
out. The ones that actually had some level of reality behind them, the leaders were bought out, sold
like
out,
Snopes,
and
one of the originals.
And so they started okay, but anybody who thinks they do research, and that's their level of research, I'm going, you're duped. You are counting on the experts within the system to tell you, what's true and what isn't true. No, they're all bought. Mm-hmm. And in our political system, in our legal system, in our media, and
it's really frightening because everywhere you turn, as soon as you get one little hole in the dam fixed, and then you turn around, you see how widespread it all is. There's no industry left untouched by this evil. And so, with the school systems, obviously, we all know that. But that was their, I can't remember the Russian leader who said, this is, I think back in World War II times, but, or maybe it was during the Cold War. And he said, give me the American children for one generation and we'll own America, and they meant it, and they've done it. And now we see the results.
Some of the same drugs that were being used under Hitler in Nazi Germany were brought to the streets in America. Some of the same I actually was at a or at a Christian college and was studying theology. And I was going, this is bogus. This is hogwash, what I am being taught. It's a mainline denominational school. And I did research on what was being taught to me. And it was developed under Hitler in Nazi Germany to affect all of the religious system of that day. And so I began to stand up in class and refute this. This was 30 plus years ago. When I was in college,
went through the same thing in college.
At a denominational school, and I was going, if I accept what they're telling me, there is no reason to give my life for this book and for this message. They were watering down religion and called it textual criticism, called it many different names, but what they were doing was systematically destroying faith. It was bogus. I even asked one of my professors one time. It was either professor of New Testament or professor of the Bible, intro to the Bible, and I said, "Do you read the Bible?" And he goes, "I'm teaching the Bible." And I was like, "Do you read the Bible?" And he goes, I'm teaching intro to the Bible. I don't understand your question." I was like, "Just get honest with me. Do you actually read your Bible?" And he goes, "I don't see the relevance of your question. Why are you asking this?" And I was like, let me ask it a different way. Has it been years since you actually opened a Bible and read it for yourself? And again, he goes, "I don't see the relevance of your question. No, I have not opened up a Bible and read it, but I don't see why that matters. I'm teaching intro to the Bible." And I was just like, that explains it. You stopped paying attention to this book at some time in the distant past. How you even think you've got credibility to teach the Bible is beyond me. And I have nothing to learn from you, because this book changed my life. And I believe this book. And I was studying because some of the things they were teaching were systematically questioning every foundation.
Yeah.
So I went back to study. I was like, because I want to have an answer for them. I don't want to just roll over and go, "No, I just believe in blind faith." No, I want to. My faith grew so much. It was my freshman year of college. I was begging my parents to let me out of there. They think, well, why every kid wants to quit college? I was like, no, I am studying hard. In fact, students around me would go, "Richard, what do you say about this class?" And I was like, he said he believes in miracles. I was like, do you want me to tell you what he really said? Am I the only one thinking? Am I the only one listening to their words? And I would literally have a group of students, and I was like, how can they not think? How can they not realize that where this train of thought is taking us? What he taught is he doesn't believe in miracles. He redefined them. And it was intelligent. It was gifted how you could do this. But I'm going, it is a very planned, systematic
a dismantling. Well, they've done the same thing, Richard, with the Constitution. And even, the lawyers, when they go through law school, what do they learn? Do they really read the Constitution? They interpret it. The way necessarily the way the founding fathers, they meant it straightforward. This is the Constitution, follow it or not. And we're seeing the repercussions of that with the J6ers. Now, I got really involved with them, but also in 2020, after the election, immediately after the election, I knew something was way off. I wasn't quite sure yet what it was, but within 2 months, I had joined a group here in Florida called Defend Florida, because it was the only one I saw that was thinking like me, that, come on, wake up, people. This is not right. And that is really a staple of our country. If we lose our elections, you can forget about it. We've lost our country. If we lose our Constitution, we've lost the rule of law. And we are right there with both of them. If we lose the Bible, which is, those three things, we have got to get back to those basics if we're going to win this war between good and evil. So with Defend Florida, we formed groups. I was going around speaking all over Florida, and so I basically spread the idea to different counties. I started one up locally in my county, and then we started growing to 34 counties out of 67 in Florida, and we were very active and very instrumental in getting two of the election bills passed, SB 90, and I think it was 423, 524. I think it was 524. But at any rate, so that was the mission I was on in 2021, and then in 2022, I went to DC. Like so many other people. Let's see, that was 2021. Sorry, at the Capitol, in January. I was there. I didn't go in, but it doesn't matter anymore. They're coming after everybody.
I know people that were in there. I just was in North Carolina. There's a young couple there. They had gone. Their sole purpose for going there was they run their own farm, and they had sausage, different types of sausage, and they knew there was going to be a lot of people there, and they went just to sell sausage, and they happened to be in the vicinity, saw people going in, walked around, walked out, and they're both serving sequential sentences. They extended sentences, years of imprisonment. And for what? For walking into the White House,
the Capitol, actually. But yeah, I know you meant that.
Yeah, the Capitol. Yeah, and just unbelievable. They've got little kids. They have a pretty large farm, chickens, cows, all this stuff.
Well, and the left doesn't like them farmers.
Baby, a newborn. Yeah, it was just. Nothing about their sentencing makes any sense. And then we had Jeremy Brown on here, who didn't even go in, warned people about going in, has a recording of the planning of the event
with the FBI,
and he's in jail. It's like how in the world have we come so far?
It's horrible.
As a nation?
And do you know that I was Jeremy's campaign manager? Yes.
No, I didn't know that. I probably have heard that. But
when Jeremy was on my podcast back in June of 2021, and I was so impressed with him. And just so the audience, I didn't know he was on your show, by the way. He was on your show? Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's an amazing speaker,
incredibly bronze mind. Oh my God! 20-year Green Beret, 4 times deployed, 2 Bronze Stars. I mean, any other time in history, he'd be a true American war hero. So,
and then even the fact that he knew when they came to approach him, he goes, "I'm recording you because that's legal. You have to inform them."
That's right.
And they didn't tell him to stop. He was like, "What kind of idiots would be doing this?" And has it all on tape.
Of course.
That's why they came after him, because he can prove that this was a setup planned out well in advance. He's got
and
the
they
proof.
approached him 1 month before January 6th, and it's even on their conversation on the tape. And if anybody wants to go check out some of his stuff, it's jeremybrowndefense.com. But he even they say something about, maybe you could help us out for what's coming in January. They and he didn't even catch that until after January, because it was like, well, then he knew, But he basically wasn't going to do anything even with the tape until Christopher Wray came in front of Congress and said, "Hey, we don't have any infiltrators." He was asked, "Do you have any infiltrators? You guys had any?" And nope, we didn't. Nope, we sure could have used some though. That was basically his answer, and that really teed Jeremy off. And so he then he went viral with it, and he got on every podcast he could to tell the American people, well, so I remained friends with him, and we talk occasionally over the telephone. And I was actually at his home the day they arrested him, and only because he and his girlfriend were having a garage sale, and I thought to myself, I'd love to spend 50 cents to get a relic from a real American hero, So I drove over and I bought a few things from their garage sale, but at any rate, so he was arrested in September 30th, I believe it was, and by the end of December, nobody was paying attention to him, and that really upset me because I saw this as a real defining point in our history, and so I went to visit him at jail. And I said, Jeremy, nobody's really paying attention to you. I mean, I was having rallies. I gathered rallies with like 100 people. We'd get in front of the jail once a month. I'd get these speakers to come, and all my volunteers from my Defend Florida efforts, because we went canvassing all over the county. That's what we did to check how dirty the voter rolls were. That was the whole mission. And we found out here in Florida, yep, in every single county we had groups canvassers. About 20% of the voter rolls were dirty. I mean, even we found
Wow.
people who were born in 1899. I mean, vacant lots. It's the whole 9 yards. We don't have a gold standard here, but because I knew the election was also a defining moment in our country. Then the next thing I moved on to was the January 6th thing, when I started seeing how they were starting to arrest these people. So I challenged Jeremy in December of 2021 to run for office from inside jail. He was in the county jail here where I live. And I said,
Yeah.
look, if you do that, I will put everything to the side. My books, my speeches, my podcasts, my articles, and be your campaign manager, which I had never done before. And so I never thought he'd take me up on it, but he did. And so we ran in a House District 62, which was a split district, partially in Pinellas and between two counties, partially in Hillsborough. So that made it very difficult. So then I took all the volunteers from the Defend Florida, and they all joined the Jeremy campaign. So we had, oh my gosh, 40 people. We had 80 in Defend Florida, so it kind of whittled down, but 40 people, and I had everybody wearing, as the campaign shirts, orange jailhouse scrubs. That really got the attention. And so for a full year, we did the canvassing. Now he was in a very, very blue district, very blue, almost Marxist in some areas. And so we knew it was going to be a fat chance to win, but we raised $45,000, which, for a Florida House seat was apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently like really, really good. And so we ran a pretty good campaign, but and he got, I think overall he got like 45% of the vote in Hillsborough. Yeah, but
Wow.
for a guy in jail.
Wow.
But downtown St. Pete, that was a different story, and I think he ended up with like 20% or so. But so I mean, together that was pretty remarkable, really. But yeah, and
So it's going to
Yes.
take grassroots movement, and it takes a level of awareness that things are not okay. We can't just
no,
trust the system anymore. The system is
yes,
out to get us. I know that sounds to a high percentage of people that just have not woken up yet, and we're talking about, but a high percentage of people, that sounds crazy. But I believe that percentage is changing drastically. I believe that it's harder to keep your head in the sand. It's harder to just accept everything's going to be fine. At the same time, people that are standing up and fighting for truth, justice, and God's way, the American way, not those are not synonymous, but I put God's way above the American way. But the people that are willing to stand up and do that are taking some huge hits. We were talking about that before we got on the air. The people that are being deplatformed, defunded, sued. You brought up Alex Jones and the level of lawsuits against him. And he's not the only one. They're going after the biggest ones one at a time. But from what I hear, they actually have a strategy of taking out all the top. And it was Tucker Carlson was one that was talking about it. And he's got to be pretty high up on the list. But the people that are trying to expose, I know Glenn Beck, different ones that are they're coming after people that are standing up, speaking out.
Well, they want to skip. Yeah, they want to put the fear of God in everybody else. And luckily here in Pinellas, because remember the 3%ers. Even back then, only 3% of people got in the fight. And that's probably about where we are right now for real activism. I mean, the volunteers here that have been through Defend Florida and Jeremy's campaign together with me are, just the cream of the crop, and the friendships that grow out of it. But some of them were never active in politics until the election. That was really a big turning point for a lot of people. And then when they started seeing how the J6ers were mistreated, that just solidified their thinking. In fact, one of the volunteers that we have for a club that we've just started to fight the establishment, because when you say there's so many, I don't think people realize out there that it's not just the Democrats that are doing this to our country. At least half of the Republicans in office are bought and paid for, or have been blackmailed, or what have you.
I think
once we lose all of them, there's nothing left to. Yeah. And that's why it's all come down now to really to a local level.
One of the reasons why I don't put all my eggs in a political or in the voting is I know in the past the evangelicals have been used and duped. We have voted for Republicans that were not who they appear to be. Even Obama getting on Rick Warren's church is where he did all
the guy
that
who said GD America, in church,
trying to use our gullibility and stupidity. And I know that has been historically we have gotten behind and believed in political figures who are actually part of drug cartels and et cetera, human traffickers and all that kind of stuff. My hope is in the Lord Jesus Christ and in great awakening and revival. And I believe we need to vote, but I believe we need to pray for our nation, and we need to pray for corruption to be exposed at every level, in every arena. And I believe that more of that is happening. And at the same time, I know how protected by the legal system many of the most the Jeffrey Epsteins of this nation, and I just use that as a figure term, but the people that are tied up in all of that kind of stuff, because of how corrupt our system is, many of them are protected. And I'm like, God, it is time for justice to roll down. It is time for the darkness to be brought into the light, and for transformation. We need revival. We need awakening.
Yeah.
We need whistleblowers. We need repentance. And protect those who stand up. I know most of the time I give a lot of credibility to whistleblowers because what motive do they have? Most of them are losing their jobs. They're losing their credibility. They're losing all kind of things for standing up and speaking out. That's the kind of courage it's going to take.
Well, and we can't be so naive. I wrote
transformed.
an article about 2 years ago saying not all whistleblowers deserve protection. And if you recall, that whistleblower that came out on Trump's phone call to Ukraine, to the president of Ukraine, if you remember that, and
no, but I've seen a couple of some of the whistleblowers that I've heard about. I'm going,
yes,
this is a scam. So I would imagine if I didn't hear about this one, you can just tell.
But the left
there is a difference.
has their back.
If they're getting tons of publicity and press, then it is a scam. It is meant to suck people in because the true whistleblowers are usually being dismissed, diminished.
But we do need more.
So
I agree with you there.
Whenever it hits,
yeah,
when it hits mainline media, I'm going, okay, what's the angle here? What are they benefiting from? And I'm like, this is bogus. Yeah. It's so easy
like
to
the woman when we talked about lawsuits earlier, the woman who sued Trump and got the $83 million. Oh my God, that makes me sick to my stomach because real victims now are questioned because of people like her and the guy. Remember the guy who attacked Kavanaugh? I mean, come on, 30 years ago, and she can't remember the day that she was raped. This woman that just won the. I mean, and then the dress that she bought, or that she was on Vogue magazine. Did you see that? She was wearing a dress, and she goes, "This is the dress that I got raped in." And then somebody did their research and found out that, actually that dress was not made until 4 years after you were raped. Okay, supposedly. But the truth always comes out. But the unfortunate thing is there's so many people who just do not want to extend the energy to listen to this stuff.
Most of the tactics are unimaginable to me. Very often, whatever they're guilty of, part of their strategy is to accuse someone else of the very things that they are guilty of.
No.
So it has nothing to do with righteousness. It has nothing to do with integrity and fighting corruption. It is disinformation. It is blame shifting. It is like I can't fathom that type of behavior, and yet we see it so much.
Yeah.
In
well, I just talked to
stuff going on.
that same family member I was talking about earlier, the liberal, and I asked a very simple question that most people would have heard about in the news, and the answer was, I'm not talking about that stuff anymore. I don't want to talk about any of that stuff. It just makes me, what was the word she used? Depressed. And I wrote back and I said, what makes me depressed is that we're about to lose our country. But yeah, so more people need to stand up, that's for sure. And that's, yeah.
Can you give me a rundown of
the ethics or the tactics?
In your book,
deplorables.
You have rules for deplorables.
There's 13 rules.
How many rules?
And here's my book, by the way.
13 rules for deplorables.
See the similarity?
Yay.
I did that on purpose because I'm hoping one day this will be side by side, so people have another view. So the 13 tactics. What do you want? What do you want with those?
Yeah.
Now I do have to read a lot of them. I do know by heart, but
I have to read my list. I just did it the other day. I have 15 keys for healing, in one of my books, and I was like, I don't have those memorized. I actually have more keys than that now, but when I wrote the book, that's how many.
Yeah. It's hard when you're when I'm using them in a sentence or describing something. I remember like number 13 I know very well, 10 I know well, 8 I know well. But to actually read them off, I mean, I can't do that. So tactic 1, this is a good one. Power is not only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. So that's the illusion. That's, and unfortunately, if people out here think they're going to do something really bad to us, that's all it needs is just for them to say they're going to do it. 2, never go outside the experience of your people. So you don't want to create chaos. They don't want to create confusion. So they keep it very, very elementary. They keep the people very dumbed down on their side, if you've noticed. Tactic 3 is kind of the exact opposite. Whenever possible, go outside the experience of the enemy. So what they do is they make something so conspiratorial sounding that the enemy doesn't, or so complicated, like the Russia collusion thing, with the dossier. It's like we can't fathom somebody doing something like that on purpose. I mean, why don't you use your power for good? And that's what we are very naive about. So when that came out, half of the Republicans believed it, and that's the danger. Tactic 4: make the enemy live up to their own book of rules. And I actually write about Kavanaugh in that chapter. That chapter's called "White Men Can't Judge," and that one really making him live up to his rules. Okay, he was kind of brought to us as a man of perfection, did no wrong, very religious, and so they kind of shoved his own rules in him, and by making him look like a drunk and that he drank all this beer and practically raped that doctor, whatever her name was, another. I mean, these are two peas in a pod. You can see the similarities. They even use the same attorneys over and over again for these people that they use to attack. Tactic 6, a good tactic is one your people enjoy. And that's for sure. And you see how their people react to pride parades, the dancers, what are they called? Drag queen stuff. They laugh so hard at that stuff. They really enjoy that stuff. 7 is a tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. And sometimes they do that to a point where even liberal, like for example, what they're doing to Trump right now with his lawfare. It's going on so long. Oh, geez, I can't believe my alarm's going off. I wonder if it's going to stop. Can you hear that? Okay, well, let's let it go because it's on the other side of the room.
Yeah.
Unless it's really annoying. So what they're doing to him right now is actually the next tactic, number 8, keep the pressure on. Come after him one after another, and that kind of goes with 10, but that's putting you out of order. I want to hit 9 first. The threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. Okay, and that's where they threaten with all this stuff that they're going to do to people, like the January 6th stuff. Now we're going after all the people who were even in the geofencing area, right? So that is making a lot of people go sit in a corner, and they don't even want to come out and be associated with others. Yep. 10 is what we're seeing with the lawfare against Trump right now. The major premise for tactics is the development of operations that will maintain a constant pressure on the opposition. And that's like flanking from all sides. I'm going to have to turn that off. And unfortunately, sorry about that.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, so interesting, the strategies that they are written out.
Oh my God, that's so much better. I couldn't take that more. So 10 is what we're seeing right now. This is awful. It's like, they've it's almost as if they give a signal around the country, and then all the lefts jump in. They know, like sleeper cells, and then they all come after him at once. 11 is if you push a negative hard and deep enough, it will break through into its counter side. I really like that one for us to use. Just keep at it, keep at it, keep at it. Eventually, it's going to win over. Right. Number 12 is the price of a successful attack is a constructive alternative. By the way, I get that a lot from my volunteers because, I'm kind of the leader here. And so sometimes one of them will come to me and say, oh, I don't like it being done that way. And I used to get really frustrated with that. Now I just go, hey, you know what? Go find a better way and come back to me. And then, so now that's kind of taught them all not to come to me with suggestions unless they have an alternative, right? 13 is my favorite. It's a biggie. And people will, once they recognize this one, they'll be able to see it happening all over the place. And that is pick a target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. So to break that down, pick a target. Well, let's pick Trump because after all, right? I mean, you can use this, though, with the J6ers. You can use it with Giuliani when he was targeted, with General Flynn, with Roger Stone. But so you pick the target, then you freeze it. What does that mean? It means you keep that target in front of the news constantly. Okay? And you personalize it. You personalize it by using Tactic 5, really ridiculing it. And you make it so that target that you've chosen looks so bad that you keep repeating it, you've frozen it right there in front of, and eventually all the people are going to believe that he's a really bad person. And that's what enables you to polarize it. So nobody wants to even say they vote for Trump, or that they were at the Capitol on January 6th, or they've been to Iraq. This is so dangerous, and that's really what's happening today. And it kind of infuriates me in a way because I'm out there. I see you are too in what you're doing, and all the activists, all the volunteers that have joined the cause that I have going now, which is a group we have here in Pinellas called Pinellas Watchdogs, and that's how I was introduced to you through Sharon, who's a part of that group. But when people cower and they stay in their corner and they don't come out and do something about what they're complaining about, guess who is paying the price for that? Me and Sharon and you, the people who have to work then twice as hard because the others are lazy or wanting to go out and party, or because I don't, honestly, Richard, I do not have a life outside of activism at this point in my life. That's how much I believe we are finished if we don't save it this last time around.
In the Bible, there was King Hezekiah, and the prophet had come to him and warned him that destruction was coming, and he cried out to God, and the prophet came back and said, because you humbled yourself, because you cried out to God, this will not happen in your lifetime. but it will happen in the lifetime of your children.
Yeah, right.
And Hezekiah was like, oh, I dodged that bullet. Like, wait a second. Are you comfortable?
Yep.
Because it might not affect you, but you don't care enough about your kids that it's going to affect them? I don't believe that what we're dealing with now is just going to impact our children. I believe, like, it's going to hit us. But if it was just for our kids,
everything,
it is worth waging a good warfare. It is worth selling out. I don't have all the answers exactly what we're supposed to do. I do put my trust in the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and I believe that it is time for prophets to speak out. I believe it's time for sons and daughters of God to operate in the supernatural presence and power of God. It's time for us to pray for our nation, pray for the leaders, pray for the darkness to be exposed. Our weapons are not carnal. They're mighty through God to pulling down strongholds. And but at the same time, it is like it took people like David to draw a sword and to go in and say, we got to fight the Philistines. We got to fight the darkness in the land. And it is how we all run together after God's kingdom. I don't have all those answers, but man, it is time to stand up. And God's been giving me dreams and different things, but one of them was so powerful. I saw, and I've shared this on this podcast a number of times, but I specifically keep seeing it in relation to people that are like standing up for the truth in our day and age. So I saw this man being beaten. There were people on either side of him, and he was being whipped. And he was mostly unclothed and taking the blows. And I knew, wasn't sure exactly what specifically, but I knew it was for his ideology. I knew it was for the things that he stood for. It's why he was being beaten. And I knew it was unjust. And the voice of God said, Richard, I want you to go and cover this man and protect him.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh. Okay, God. And because I say yes to the Lord. And so I'm like, I'm like bracing myself. And this is in a dream. I woke up and my heart was racing. But I walked up and I covered this man, knowing that the blows are gonna hit me unless they stop. And I could hear the whips cracking. And I'm praying. I began praying as I walked up to this man. I'm praying in the spirit over him, and I began to sing a song. And it's weird. I'm like going, I can hear the whips cracking, but I'm not feeling it on my body. My body's tensed up like I'm ready to take the blows, but I'm not feeling it. And this wash came over me of faith, like God's either taking those blows, an angel is taking those blows. My body, is taking them, but I'm not feeling them, or they're missing. I don't know exactly what, but I'm praying. My faith is rising as I'm praying, and I start singing about the blood of Jesus over this guy. And I glance up, because at first, like, I'm thinking it could hit my eye. I'm like, protecting my eyes, kind of. And I glance up, and there's a couple with some kids sitting on the hillside, and they're watching this whole thing. And their face lights up, and they begin to sing along, like my faith encouraged them. And I'm singing louder. I'm singing, and they're singing along, and the boldness is rising. I'm still like hunched over this guy as I'm singing, and all of a sudden I feel an arm come around my shoulder, and I glance up, and it's one of the men holding a whip, and he's come to put his arm around me, and he starts singing with me. And then we stand up together, the guy that I'm covering and this guy, and we begin walking up the hill. The other guy is in the distance. I don't see him. I never even look at him again. I saw him at the beginning, whipping this guy. And we're walking up this hill together. And we're singing together. And I knew we were headed somewhere important. And I knew that it was significant. But the dream ended. And I woke up, and it was this sense like of, yes, like victory, but I could also tell, like, I had been sweating. My body had tensed up preparing to take those blows. And the interpretation came to me that it is time for us to arise, to stand together, to cover one another as we
For sure.
face the persecution that is coming. And that as we do that, that others will be emboldened. Their faith will rise up. Even our accusers, even those that are doing the abuse, will turn and join us. And it
sounds powerful, and
it was powerful.
I also feel, as you do, that that's the only thing, our faith in God, that's going to turn this around. Because, you know, where there's darkness, we have to bring light into it. That's it. I mean, and to me, this is within several years. All this is going to happen. I'm so encouraged by what I see on the border right now with the truckers. That really gives a lot of hope that.
And the governor of Texas waking up.
About
I don't know anything about the truckers.
It's like a convoy that has gone to Eagle Pass, I think is what they call it, to stop the illegals from coming in. They're going there because the Supreme Court just ruled against Abbott, the governor. He put up all that concertina wire to stop, and then the administration sued him, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that the government could go in and take it down. Yes, and so once that happened,
so it looks like now, because there's a lot of states that are standing with Texas, but our government is standing against that.
Yes,
sadly,
exactly.
I mean, this is part of the strategy: is to divide and conquer, to create chaos. So there's nothing reasonable about the agenda that's coming down. It's sad that our Supreme Court, like we thought that there's been some changes there, and that's the kind of stuff that I go. Very often, I believe we're being duped. We begin to believe in people, and some of our Supreme Court justices have been exposed, and then but then there's the false exposing. And that's where it takes so much spiritual discernment to know the truth, and to hear God's voice. We need men and women that can really hear God's voice.
Yeah, every morning when I wake up, I ask the Lord to move me in the direction that He wants me to be in. Wherever that takes me, I am His for this fight, because I don't have any children, and so, you know, I'm doing it for everybody else's kids, because I cannot allow myself not to do everything I can to stop this evil from being in the next generation. It's not fair, it's not right, and I just don't like evil. So and that's why I started the podcast that you came on, and that's called Warn 2024. We are real news, and it's the only podcast out there that is by an activist interviewing activists to motivate couch potatoes to get off their butts and get into the fight and become an activist. And that's what the intention of it is. And I do see more people waking up, and I'm very encouraged by that. And now, to me, it's a balancing act. I know we're going to win in the end, because God tells us we're going to, right? But it's going to be an awful lot of destruction before that happens.
Yeah. Well, we need to pray. We need to pray for our nation. We need to pray for the people that are standing up and that are speaking out. And we need to pray for those that are asleep. That I had written something years ago and done a thing called Wake Up, and it was a wake up to the sleeping giant. And I love the idea of people being
I know,
awake
it's
and
so
woke
it's so opposite.
until that term was even taken. I'm like, oh, yes. And I was like, if the sleeping giant really wakes up, it's not going to be woke. It's gonna step on the lies and the kingdom of darkness. So, well, could you go ahead and close this podcast in prayer? And I might pray too. I just really feel led to close in prayer, but I want to ask you just to lead, and I'll close after you. And we need, pray for more people to
yes,
wake up
Lord,
and to join the fight.
We do need
in
more
every type of
people
way.
here on the ground to recognize the evil that is surrounding us. And please take the scales off their eyes. We protect those who are putting targets on their backs, literally. Protect the J6ers, because they're really standing up for our constitutional rights. And we need to hold strong on our Constitution. We need to hold strong on our elections. Give people courage to get out of their homes and to join those of us who are trying to ensure that we do not lose this great country of ours. Amen.
Yes, God. Mm-hmm. And Father, I pray for men and women of God to rise up, to pray and fast like they've never prayed and fasted before. Lord, those that they know the truth and they have been silent because they just want to keep the peace. Lord, I pray for them to have boldness. Doctors that are waking up to the corruption, Lord. I pray, God, more doctors. I thank you for the tens of thousands of doctors that are waking up, that are speaking out. I pray for more, for the politicians, the lawyers, the judges, Lord, that are in the mix and they see the corruption, God. And they know that their job could be on the line. I pray, Father God, for them to rise up and speak out. For those in the military that have witnessed the corruption firsthand, that have been participants, not willingly, not knowingly, but have found out that the things that they fought for were not godly, were not righteous. I pray, Lord, for them to have boldness to speak out, to be willing to lose their careers. I pray that in every sphere in this nation, Lord, until justice begins to flow. I pray for revival, awakening, for people to realize, God, it is time to not roll over, to not play quiet, to not play peacefully even, Lord. It is time to fight, to wage a powerful war, not a war of guns and violence, but a war of love, a war of prayer, a war of fasting, a war of righteousness, a war of truth, a war of boldness, Lord. I pray, Father, that for just against the schemes that have been trained and taught, the tactics of the kingdom of darkness that have been trained, drilled into people in the religious systems, in the political systems, in the legal systems of our land. God, wake us up, wake them up, help them to see that those rules of the radicals, God, is evil. It is dedicated to the kingdom of darkness. Expose the kingdom of darkness, Lord. And may your light shine bright in this nation, brighter than it's ever shone.
Amen. You do that so much better than me. You said it all. I
well, you got me fired up. Yeah. Well, thanks for being our guest. Thanks for your book. I would love a copy. We need to get each other's address, and I'll send you some of mine if you like to read.
I have an audio book
I have an audio
as
book
well.
too.
People can go to Amazon if they'd
Jesus
like,
Training Manuals.
and just search for Rules for Deplorables, and they can buy one there. And also, if they feel like they want to, if they're inspired by this and they want to get involved, if they live here locally in the Tampa Bay area. Come to Muggs, Muggs is at ICOT. Most people who live here know ICOT Center, and we meet. Pinellas Watchdogs meets, and we're tackling all these issues. The fourth Tuesday of every month at 6:30, and they can listen to my podcast if they want to hear what other activists go through and how they got involved. They can look up rumble.com/c/warn2024.
I had another guest that's kind of into some of the similar stuff, and I can't remember who she was. And I said something to her, and I want to say it to you, and I want to try to remember it because it would be interesting. You guys probably know each other if I could remember. She was a guest. But anyways, I was like, I'd love to at least host a lunch and learn, even if it's just for myself and my staff, but I'd love to open it up to other people to hear what it would look for some Christians to have boots on the ground, to stand up and make a difference. It would be fun to have maybe Jeremy even call in and talk for a little bit, but extended like half a day, gathering to see what God would want to do in the.
Well, are
Hillsborough
you familiar with
area.
FFF? I think it's Faith, Family, Friends. I can't remember the last F, but it's a group of pastors, and who have coalesced to it's Daniel, Pastor Daniel Anthony, and Anthony Daniels. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so they have that, and they're actually working to help candidates, America First candidates. They're trying to make. I think you're right. I think it is McDaniels.
Anthony McDaniels, I think it is.
And
right?
so I just met with them about a month ago for a breakfast because we're all trying to help these candidates right now to get the right people into the school boards and the city commissioners and that sort of thing. But yeah. And then I don't know if you've ever seen the Black Robed Regiment.
Cool. Yeah.
Have you ever? You're familiar with it?
It's interesting because 6-8 months ago I began to see more and more of this kind of thing, and I was like, go team, but now it's like. My eyes are more open, and I'm giving more value to this kind of stuff. So I have heard of it. I can't tell you where or when, but it's like I'm starting to wake up more and more to the reality. Like as much as I believe prayer and fasting and all that has done more to train.
Well, this
is
interesting because there's a guy out in Oklahoma who comes here every once in a while and performs this like one-man play on the Black Robed Regiment. His name is Dan Fisher, if you Googled him, but it is unbelievable show for you to show people. But the Black Robed Regiment was a group of pastors in the Revolutionary War. Who finally said, are we part of this or not? If we're going to fight this is God's war for freedom. And so they shed their robes, their black robes, and picked up a musket and joined the fray. So that's a pretty interesting story there. That's what we need more of.
Interesting. I have heard about that. Where I don't remember, but yeah, I've heard a little bit about that. Yeah, let's at least start with, and I'm saying this out loud because I got one of my staff here that helps coordinate that kind of stuff. But we need to. I'll try to remember invite Anthony McDaniels and you, and invite some friends from this area. But go, what do we need to do? How do we get more involved? And what's the next step, and maybe hosting something bigger.
Me
at some time.
too. Believe me.
I have a very
yeah.
busy schedule, and I'm not looking to add anything to my schedule. But I believe that we have to go. I don't care how busy I am.
We have to unite,
We have
and get everybody on the same
we
page.
have to be involved.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you. You too.
So appreciate what you're doing.
All right, Richard.
Lord's
Thank you very
blessings.
much, and I appreciate
And,
what you're doing as
we will
well.
talk again
So
soon.
thank you for having me on, and good luck to you.
All right. Thank you. Take care.